welcome to the second episode of The Value Creators. It is my pleasure to welcome today Joshua Stone, Head of Strategic Initiatives of EQT. Hi, Josh.
Hi, Stephane. Thanks for having me.
It's a real pleasure. So, what can you tell us about EQT right now?
So, EQT, Swedish private equity house, has been in business since mid-90s. Right now, I think we're at around, last reported number is 77 billion AUM, around 19 funds or so that we manage to date. That is actually excluding Exeter, which has a number of funds as well in the US, the recently acquired real estate operator and manager. In addition to that, you may have known or may have seen that we acquired Baring recently in Asia, or at least signed an agreement to acquire them with the closing expected later this year. We have now around 1,200 people in total in the company around the world. With Baring, that'll actually increase to about 1,500. So pretty significant growth. I mean, I joined, I think, in 2015 when we were 400 people or so. So quite an interesting journey. So yeah, I mean, we have offices around the world, really. We have, excluding Exeter, which has a number in North and South America. We have two in New York and San Francisco in the US, and then in Europe, all around Europe. Obviously, I mean, we're a Swedish firm, European firm by breed, let's say. And then in Asia, we've really been expanding there for quite some time, right? So I mean, now we have 6 offices, but as you can imagine, with the acquisition of Baring, we will have a number of additional offices over there. Yeah.
And what about your operations in Luxembourg?
So Luxembourg, I mean, good question. So I mean, I joined in about 2015, and we were a relatively small shop, around 8 people. We were managing a couple very small senior debt funds. We had a credit platform at that time. We also had just launched our venture fund from Luxembourg. So kind of moving up, but at that time, EQT actually had 3 different. We had decided to onshore from Guernsey in 2014, and we actually had 3 different fund managers by the time I joined the firm, and the group made the smart decision that we probably need to invest in one, and really put a lot of effort and energy into that as just being the most efficient and effective way to move forward. And yeah, I mean, we looked at all the jurisdictions that we had been operating in the UK, Netherlands, and Luxembourg, and I think you were definitely aware, but it was decided at that point in time to really invest heavily in Luxembourg, which has been great. Today we are around, well, over 100. I don't know the exact number, so it's been quite a significant growth. And now, since that 2016 or so, all funds of EQT have been launched from Luxembourg. So yeah, I think the 77 billion, sorry, that I quoted earlier is primarily all managed here in Luxembourg. And I think if you look actually at the numbers that we report to the CSSF, it's probably closer to 100 billion because there's the 77 is actually fee paying, whereas we have a lot of LP co-invests, which add to the number. Let's see. I mean, our operations here are we don't delegate any portfolio management, so we do portfolio management in-house, but on an advisory basis, of course. So we have advisors, deal teams all around the world. Whose job is to go out there and find the best deal and make recommendations to us to invest. We do, however, work very, very closely with the deal teams hand in hand in closing all the deals. And then, we have, a lot of operations around accounting, reporting, treasury, corporate secretarial governance matters, and a lot around client fundraising operations and structuring. So pretty big operations here, and yeah.
That's a very serious success story, and as you said, an impressive journey.
Yeah.
What are EQT's expectations before investing into a new business?
So We really try to focus on specific themes. We're a thematic investor, and we really try to focus on specific sectors as well. It's not that an investment kind of lands on our desk and we say, oh yeah, how do we fit that in somewhere? No, I mean the idea is really that we look at the themes out there, so digitalization, automation, sustainability, aging population, connectivity, and we try to find investments that work in those themes. And likewise on the sector side, sectors obviously different slightly between our private capital and our real assets. But private capital, for example, I mean, healthcare is definitely one of them, and on the infrastructure, environmental infrastructure, sustainable infrastructure, social infrastructure, are all sectors that we look at.
So that's the analytical part. And how do you create value concretely, and how do you measure it?
So, I mean, how do we concretely add value? I mean, we have what we call our house of value creation. So it's very much a toolbox that has a whole bunch of different tools that we can use to add value creation. Revenue enhancements, strategic realignments, buy and build. We can do add-ons, strategic add-ons. So that's kind of the core. That's the toolbox. That's the backbone, let's say. But some of the more important aspects, which have been a big focus. I mean, more recently, but also historically, is one our EQT network. So we have independent advisors around the world that are very focused on specific sectors, non-employees of EQT, that we've kind of nourished for quite some years, and we can kind of call them up if we have a question about pesticides, for example, and we don't have the expertise internally. We can very easily call up one of these maybe senior executives that have been in the business for quite some time and ask them questions about it. So that's the network. In addition to that, we have, of course, our governance model. I mean, governance is extremely important in these situations. So, I mean, obviously, we put in a board in every single one of the companies that we acquire, at least the ones that we acquire majority ownership in. But then in addition to that, there's more of an informal body, which we call the Troika. And the Troika consists of the CEO, the chairman of the board, as well as the EQT partner that's responsible for the deal. And they meet, the frequency depends, right? But I mean, let's say in the early 100-day plan of the investment, you might be meeting on a weekly basis. And that's just to really make sure that, that they are, as closely aligned as possible, that they can make quick decisions, right or left. I mean, it's not a formal decision-making body by any means. I mean, that is the board, of course, but this is that body then to take what has been decided by the board and really try to act quickly in implementing it. So that's another one, and I would add to that is of course our company EQT has invested a lot, starting when I joined in digitalization. Moving to the clouds, being quickly connected to everything as best as possible, which also actually, just to throw that in there, really helped us during COVID. I mean, from one day to the next, we went home and business as usual. There was no issues whatsoever. Obviously, the social impact of people being alone at home as opposed to in an office was quite tough, but nevertheless, so digitalization and I mean that allowed us to have the toolbox internally that we could then help all of our companies add value in the same way themselves. And then the final one I think is of course more recently. Not more recently a focus, but more of a buzzword, let's say, than anything, is the sustainability. And let me explain why I say that. The reason that I say that is because, I mean, since the beginning, we have always been about investing, is more than capital, or we are more than capital. And so we've always really been focusing on buying companies and helping them become great and become, sustainable, patrons in the economy. So I mean, it's I think now that sustainability and ESG matters is becoming much more widely expected from the broader population. it's actually been a really a competitive advantage for us, I think, because I mean we've been much further ahead in the thinking than some of our competitors.
This is a quite robust setup. Any specific business cases you would like to use in order to illustrate your value creation process?
Yeah, there's a couple that I can kind of think of. I mean, one is actually Instavolt. So that's UK's kind of fastest growing creator or installer of charging stations for electronic vehicles. So I mean, clearly that has the sustainability angle. It has the the environmental infrastructure angle that I mentioned before. I mean, if you look at in terms of the themes, if you look at the UK has said that by 2030 they're going to ban the sale of all petrol and gas vehicles. So again, it's a trend. It's going to happen. It needs to happen. Why not support it and invest with that trend? In addition to that, I think in the UK, what I was reading was that in 2021, the sale of electronic vehicles was fivefold what it was in the previous 5 years or something along those lines. So again, very thematic. And I mean, this company was already a good company, and what we always say is good to great, right? And what we want to do is support them with capital to allow them to achieve their own goals. And another one that I can think of is Guardian, which is it's a very large pest manufacturer in China. And you might ask, how is that thematic and how is that sector based? I mean, thematic, I would say, pesticides. We actually have experience in previous pesticides companies, Anticimex, and really trying to make sure that we are helping the industry create pesticides that are done in an environmentally safe way. So I mean, that's experience that we can obviously leverage on this company. And in addition to that, particularly in China, I mean, there's the urbanization trend, right? So there's a lot of people that are coming out of the countryside and moving into the cities, and pesticides is a way to, let's say, improve the living standards in those urban environments, right?
Thanks a lot, Josh, for your insights, for sharing those different cases. It was a pleasure to host you, and see you next in our Value Creators episode. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Stephane.